You're in Riverside Theater. This is the Waxlock stage. We're incredibly grateful that the theater makes the space available to us and they make their staff available to us, which is a wonderful community service. And so they're kind of our living room right now for Vero Beach. And so we are very happy to be here and see all of you here. Because we are, of course, in a theater, and I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce you to Oscar Sales. He's the director of marketing for the theater. He's been and Oscar has been with the theater for over 20 years. And the theater is nice enough to offer 2 tickets for Jesus Christ Superstar. So we're, which is what Oscar's fabulous or the show is fabulous or both. Both. So Oscar, here we go. This because the here we go. Because obviously the show is going on in the main stage. We only have two microphones left in the whole building, and we have them. So we're going to pass this microphone up and down the line here. And so tell us a little bit about Jesus Christ Superstar, and then we'll raffle off the 2 tickets.
Okay.
Here you go.
Well, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice conceived of this as a concept album, rock concert, telling the story of the last week of Jesus' life on earth. And it's filled with villains like Pontius Pilate, King Herod, and of course Judas. But it's done with a very contemporary score, and our production is very contemporary, just as cutting edge as it was in the 1970s. The rock music, the story, the lights, it's going to really make you feel something special from this story. So we're thrilled that you're all here today, and we hope that you'll make it to this room next door to the theater to get tickets to Jesus Christ Superstar. So we're going to give out 2 tickets. All the information, any performance from now until it closes on March 22nd.
Okay.
So let's see. We have, I believe, all the names. I read put all the names of people that have come here tonight, and we ask that you be present to get them.
Last time I did was the first 2 were here. Yeah, I am Blair Freeze. All right. So much. It's nice to meet you. I've known your daughter for many years. I never knew that. Thank you, Oscar. I appreciate it. Enjoy the show, Dr. Freeze. Thank you for coming. And for those of you who haven't joined us here tonight, we're very appreciative. So if you're a first-time Let's Talk Vero person, raise your hand. Wow, that's terrific. Thank you so much. And obviously, we're most appreciative of those of you who are brave enough to come back. So thank you so much. And I introduced you to Arvina Wolfley, and I didn't really share with you enough about her because she is the founder and curator of Let's Talk Vero and Vero Minute. So she's incredibly talented. And she's an incredibly talented writer, and it was her idea to get all of us together tonight to talk about property taxes. So I have to give credit where credit is due. So thank you so much. So, but we also would like to thank our partners for this evening. And so we'd like to recognize Shannon O'Leary and T.P. Kennedy of T.P. Kennedy Group for their partnership on this event for us tonight. And as you may know, they are ongoing supporters of civic engagement here in Vero Beach. We also appreciate Morgan Reynolds of Beyond the Trend Marketing and Main Street Vero Beach, who is here tonight. And she is working really hard to make downtown Vero Beach a happening place. So thanks for coming tonight, Morgan. And Mr. Chris Croman is here. He is our photographer, and he is incredibly talented, and he puts the videos together for us that then Irina posts on the to your email. And last but certainly not least, we'd like to acknowledge Austin Dingwall of Dingwall Architecture, and also for his broader support of the community conversations like we're trying to have tonight. and for work that links design, quality of life, and the aesthetic character of Vero Beach. So thank you so much, Austin. We appreciate it.
Why don't we thank Maribel O'Hare too?
It's really nice to do. I just follow instructions well. I thought maybe, I know these gentlemen know this topic like the back of their hand, but I just thought for us lay people, we'll try to kind of frame a little bit where we are with the emphasis that our whole objective is to have a totally neutral conversation. We're neither pro nor con, but maybe these gentlemen will help tease out what they think is important for us to know about this issue of the proposed elimination of a portion of our property taxes. So as you may know, the legislature, the Florida House voted 80-30 to approve a bill they call HJR 203. And so that bill passed, and the objective of that bill is to eliminate property taxes for those of us who are homesteaded. So that means probably most of you, I suspect, here are homesteaded. That means you're probably a Florida resident, and this is your primary residence. So hence the nickname or jargon that you're homesteaded. Now, the proposed elimination of a portion of the property tax is supposed to be should be fully eliminated by January 1 of 2027. Now, this particular proposal is a constitutional amendment. And constitutional amendments hence are a little bit different in the state of Florida because it needs 60% approval of all Florida voters in order to basically implement this particular provision, i.e. this HJR 203, to eliminate homesteaded property taxes. Very big picture. Our county has a quote unquote a market value of roughly $50.5 billion. So that's kind of what we're worth. That's pretty good. A round of applause for Indian River County. Very similar to Martin County and Port St. Lucie County in terms of range of value. But we're not taxed on that full 50 billion. We are taxed on what we call the assessed value. In other words, that's when you get your tax bill, on the bottom of the tax bill, it tells you what your property is assessed. That's certainly different than its market value. So in the assessed value, you are taxed. And that is the portion of the property tax that's being proposed to be eliminated. Now, also very big picture, collectively, the county generates roughly $460 million of taxes. And I'm kind of rounding up the numbers a little bit. I know these gentlemen know to the 9th digit, but I'm, for conversation's sake, round it up a little bit. So we collect about $460 million of taxes. $200 million go right to the school system. And so that's not part of this quote unquote elimination of property taxes. But there's a number left, and that number is about $125 million. That's the number that is the taxes that are proposed to be eliminated for those of us that are Florida residents, and our primary residence is here, and we are homesteaded. So that's very generic, big picture background. Now, I'd like to also probably now be a good time to introduce you to our panel. This gentleman right here to my let me take this microphone. This is Mr. Darrell Orr, and he is currently the chair of the Indian River County Commission and a former 3-term sheriff of Indian River County. And so he brings countywide budget experience and perspective and decades of public service. And we chatted earlier, we're both Florida Gators.
Okay.
And so he said he was recruited right off campus, and the rest is history. So thank you for joining us today. And we all decided just to go by first name basis. Darrell, this young man right here is Lance Lunford. And Lance is the Taxpayer Association president, and he's the president of the Taxpayers Association of Indian River County, and leading a group focused on limited, efficient government and fiscal discipline. Lance is, whoa, I almost did a digger backwards. Lance is all of 26 years old. And, but if you ask him any number about the county, I think he could give it to you. So, and he graduated from Wharton School of Finance. So he's a numbers guy. So thank you for joining us. Oh, and he's born and raised in Vero Beach and went to Vero Beach High School. All right, the gentleman next to Lance. Vero Beach High School. Okay, be careful. That's it. This gentleman right here is, this is Mr. John Coutinho. He is our mayor. And, you have a fan club? Better than no fan club. There you go. All right. Obviously, longtime community leader. This is his third term as elected mayor of City Council. And he moved to Vero Beach after a very successful private sector career. And he has been closely involved with major city initiatives like the Three Corners Vision and our utilities policy. And so thank you for joining us tonight. And last but certainly not least is Monty Falls. Monty is, I think of Monty as the CEO of the city of Vero Beach. And this is his 36th year of working for the city. And so if anybody has quote unquote institutional knowledge about the operations of the city, it would be Monty. And but I believe you started your career as a engineer.
That's correct.
Right, with the city.
Here.
Here in Vero Beach, right? So and he's still brave enough to do this and work for the public, which is really a treat. So these, right? I mean, you have to. I mean, I think when you're in public service, you put yourself out there, and I think that takes a lot of nerve. So I think so we appreciate you. Thank you. Now, since this is going to be Switzerland today and neutral, I'm not even going to pick who goes and talks first. So, since I like to play tennis, I have a lot of dead tennis balls in my garage. So you pick the tennis ball and see what. So you are number 3.
I should look into this.
You are number 4.
Oh, geez, mine.
Here we go.
You're 1.
You're number 2, and you're number 1 by cross elimination.
That's 5 and 7/8.
All right, so you'll go first. Monty will go first. You're number 2, and 3, and you're number 4. Okay,
Perfect. 1.
perfectly right. I like it. Okay,
We almost got a count.
very clever, right? And my hat when I took the kids to Disney World in the year 2000. The kids didn't want it, so it's still in my closet, and it comes in handy. In any case, so obviously, I'm not a tax expert when it comes to taxes for cities and counties, but the number that kind of struck me was this $125 million that ballpark wouldn't be collected any longer, right? Because that tax would be eliminated. And so, hence, I hope what we can learn tonight is, should that go away, how can it be replaced, and how would that impact us as citizens of this community, right? You will get something, i.e., less tax, but then what concessions do you have to make potentially on the other end, right? Because that money hasn't been collected. So I'm hoping these gentlemen will be able to help us kind of visualize it, how they think this is a kind of a reasonable way to move forward. So I'll start with the first question. And Monty, you're it, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So if we now envision this bill passing, and we now collect less revenues, you're now running the city. So what would you have to do now to figure out how to pigeonhole, the shortfall.
Well,
And here, let me hand you this microphone.
thank you very much.
Uh-huh. There you go.
In the city of Vero Beach, we have about 40% of our properties.
Can you stand up, please?
In the city of Vero Beach, we have about 40% of our properties that are homestead protected. 43% are not homestead protected, and about 17% are commercial. So if this bill gets a companion bill in the Senate and ultimately gets to the ballot and gets passed, that means those 43% and 17% will bear the burden of the taxes that we have today if we're to keep the same level of service. So what that would mean for you as a city resident, instead of your millage being 2.96, it would go up to 3.95, about a 28% increase. So if that's if we maintain the same level of service. And if we elected to not raise the millage and keep the millage the same, we'd be looking at about $7.5 million less in the first year of revenue that we'd get. That's a big hit when you're talking about a general fund budget of 36 million, that we get only about 14 in property taxes. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you might have parks that would close or have reduced hours. You might see the landscaping at city properties be maintained on a less schedule. You definitely see parking fees, boat ramp fees, beach use fees. Then if you wanted your road paved, we wouldn't be coming out to do that like we did. There'd be a special assessment for road paving, special assessments for street lights. And depends on how deep those cuts go. You might be looking at reduced staff. The police department's budgets would be capped at a certain level, but there's no provision right now to increase those budgets. So you could be looking at police officers' pay that was stagnant. You could be looking at getting rid of non-essential services in the police department, like our animal control. Everybody loves to have that service. So a myriad of things. No beach lifeguards. You wouldn't see that beach raker out there cleaning up seaweed anymore. So I could go on, but I'll let the next question go and be here to answer questions.
Yes, I think
Once you share with us your viewpoint of this particular tax proposition, then yes, I'll walk around, and I suspect a lot of you have questions. You know, I will come. I'd like to have these gentlemen kind of tell us a little bit how they think about this, and then I'll cruise around and I'll go you first. So, John, Mr. Coutinho.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
So what do you think? You're the mayor, and now, and good luck with that. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's all right. It's fine.
And so now, what do you have to now share with us in terms of, from your vantage point, this potential elimination of money coming into the city?
Well, if places, well, let me go back and just say, from my standpoint, the citizens of Vero Beach will lose any access or any belief they had in home rule. Home rule goes away if this bill passes. Don't be under any illusion that you will have home rule, because if you give
did you say home rule?
home rule,
Explain that.
Okay.
Can you explain?
little okay, ruling at the local level.
Okay,
If you allow Tallahassee to dictate how the local property taxes are collected and distributed, then you are at the mercy of what Tallahassee wants you to spend and collect. Now, we can go into a lot of natty detail of what Tallahassee has done in the last two sessions, specifically about the erosion of home rule, but this is like a cap on the profound effect it will have on the citizens. If you look at a lot of their white papers they produced, they're looking in their theory, to have efficiencies at the municipal level, which in some instances, in their vernacular, is to eliminate municipalities. Because in their feeling, municipalities are inefficient, inefficient. For us, I'm going to only speak about Vero Beach. The impact of that, if you had to surrender your charter, is that the sacrosanct height rule limit here goes away. Okay, just goes away. You will now be at the mercy of whatever developer and whatever the city council makeup is, or whatever height, whatever density. And I know we hold these things very sacrosanct here. If what gets built in the city, what happens to your trees, what happens, all that gets affected. So that's what the medium home rule is from my aspect. The other thing is, and I don't know if anybody else wants to mention is, I decided to look at my trim notes. Yeah, it's not my everyday reading, but today I decided to look at it. So this is what else you will lose, okay, if this is approved in Tallahassee, or I should say the referendum is approved. Not only do you lose your whole rule, St. John's Water management essentially goes away. That's not all their funding, but it's the vast majority of their funding. There'll be no such thing as a mosquito control district. Okay, so good luck with that in the summer. Hospital district, most of their funding comes from this. That goes away in one way, shape, or form. Florida Inland Navigation, the monies that go to support that, and then what they call, and I believe in Darrell can correct me if I'm wrong, the land acquisition bonds, title to this, which we're trying to retire land in the rural parts of our county, so it remains that. So all those things, which make up the profile and the environment of Vero Beach and Indian River County, are in jeopardy. So that's how I look at this and managing this and trying to get the story out to tell the people how they're going to be affected by this versus looking at the shiny bauble of the tax reduction. To me, is an important part of why I'm here.
Thanks, John. Daryl, I think when we chatted, you've had a wonderful career, graduated from UF 1988. So I just dated you, sorry. Okay, sorry. But I thought you had a diverse career, and I think you probably have a good perspective of, I think, the pros and cons of this particular conversation. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, considering we're not chair or county commission, what you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for Let's Talk Vero for inviting me. I know there's other folks that have that mentioned to me they were coming, and it's remarkable to see a crowd, which tells me that you're concerned. As the chairman of the Board of County Commission, I'm very honored to be here. I see my esteemed colleague, Vice Chair Laura Moss in the back. And we talked about this a lot. Thank you, Laura, since the meeting. And I think there's a few more elected officials that are here. And I want to say thank you to those elected officials, particularly, because when you put your name on a ballot, you might as well change the ballot for a bullseye, because it's either too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, right? But that's what we do, and we enjoy it. As mentioned, this is my 36th year as a public servant, 20 with the Florida Highway Patrol, State of Florida Division of Highway Safety Motor Vehicles, and 12, of course, as your elected sheriff. And I say that not to brag, although I've been accused of being a bragger from time to time, but I say that from a perspective of funding. And I say that from a perspective of a first responder. And first and foremost, we do not need to panic. There is not a hostage situation in this room. Nobody is bleeding, what I'm told. I do know that there might have been an incident at the theater last night with an AED involved, but hopefully we're not going to have that here tonight. So let's all take a deep breath. We've talked about a House bill that has passed. There has not been a Senate bill introduced. Everyone knows there's got to be a House bill and a Senate bill, companion bill. Friends, that has not happened. We've got 7 days left in this session till March 13th. Very important that you keep that in mind. In line of perhaps a special session. University of North Florida came out with a poll today that if, a lot of this were to make it on the ballot, it does not look favorable. It does not have the traction to get 60% plus one vote. So let's take a deep breath on that. Let's talk about the facts. Number one, we're one of 9 states that does not have a state income tax, right? One of 9 states that does not have a state income tax. Makes us obviously very attractive, right? Very, very attractive. All 50 states have some form of homestead exemption, or I'm sorry, of property taxes. So keep that in mind. Every state has some form of property taxes. Friends, and I think Lance will tell you that goes back some 200 years in certain parts of our country. There is a reason for that. It eliminates what some would call a regressive tax. So let's talk about that for a few moments. Let's talk about on the county's level. Last year alone, our budget was about $595 million. $196 million came and realized from property taxes, to be quite frank with you. The latest numbers from the property appraiser's office indicates that 53% of our residents are homesteaded. 53% are homesteaded, right? Over 90,000 total. So when we do the simple math and say, let's take those 53% out of the entire nut, if you will, and let's put them aside. And I think Monty or John mentioned it. Then who, if this happened, and I'll be quite frank with you, friends, I'm an optimist. I don't see this happening. I don't see, there could be a form in the Senate. If those of you that follow politics very close know that this was generated by our governor. Many of you know that our governor is fixing to be a lame duck. I can tell you from my experience of 36 years in local offices as well as state and federal offices, what happens when that person is no longer eligible to run for office. Sometimes you lose friends. The phone stops ringing. Don't know that for sure. We do know that that was the catalyst of getting this discussion to occur to perhaps get on the ballot. I will say, and I spoke to Bob Seuss earlier this morning. I think every one of us is on the Bob Seuss show up here. If anything, friends, this has twisted the cap and opened the discussion, whether this happens this year or never happens. And that will all be in the tune of the Florida Senate, the discussions, if that happens, if there's a special session. And I can tell you, we know from history, last year, the immigration bill went to a special session because there was a little debate with our Speaker, Danny Perez, in the House, and our governor. There seems to be a little tension there, and it continues to be tension. You will also read where Senator Hooper today made some comments about the Senate perhaps not even having a companion bill. So as a first responder, let's take a deep breath. Nobody's pleading yet. This is an exercise, friends. This is an exercise that I will tell you every municipality, 435 of them in the state, and all 67 counties, trust me, have opened their books and looked and said, what are we going to do? From the county's perspective specifically, we have already began exercises, and I know Vice Chair Moss is aware of that, where we have asked via our county administrator, our staff to start looking at cuts from 5 to 15, 15% to 20%. In fact, as a precautionary measure, we've also put most hiring on freeze. Now, I say that to say this. Look at your experience in your local leaders, and by way of seeing you realize, I realize that government functions best at a local level. We don't know what our House and Senators, our reps and our senators are doing right now. We don't know what Washington, D.C. is doing right now. But you know what your county commission and your city commission, county commission and city commissioners do. And that's very reflective of what we do. Trust that we have the experience on both of those bodies, not to panic, but to think very hard about things. You know, I have a motto, whether it's a coaching motto or a life motto or a financial motto. We don't hope to win a ball game. We don't hope to be successful financially. We don't hope for our children to stay out of jail. We plan for them to stay out of jail. We plan for our team to win. We don't get on the field and hope we're going to win. No, friends, we have planned and planned and planned. So take a deep breath. You're in good hands with the county commission, with the city. I met with John. John and I were at an event last night and we talked about different things. And we thought that you guys would be throwing tomatoes at us by now, but that hasn't happened. So now, with that being said, I know I like to ramble. I've been told that. But from a 26-year-old perspective, I met Lance Lunsford several years ago. And I will say, there's not many 26-year-olds in Vero Beach that have the skill set that he has the energy. Of course, 26, got a lot of energy. But I think you're going to be very, very satisfied with this young man and what he has to bring to the table. And I look forward to answering some more of your questions and some of the things that are planning, like what's going to happen if we cut this. I have a whole list of them, but I don't want to scare you. That's my number one mission tonight. So thank you.
Very well said.
I did not pay him to say that, just for the record.
You know, you were nice enough to acknowledge the other community leaders here. And so, as I always say, the downside of public speaking is you inevitably always kind of forget something. So I would like to invite our local representatives, please stand and take a round of applause. Linda Moore, Mr. Boss, Mr. Farrell, and Lauren. So, thank you, Dan. And I will represent County Commission 5, which is basically the area I suspect most of you live in, as she says, right here. All right, Lance, okay, you're ready to dazzle us with your brilliance?
High standards. And all the jokes aside, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure and honor to be here. I serve as the president of your Taxpayers Association, a 93-year-old institution that really, if I summarize what all the things that we aspire to do, we talk about fiscal responsibility, we talk about limited government, we talk about getting the best return on investment for your tax dollars. But really, all of that is the what. The why is because we want to be good stewards of this community. Every single person in this room knows how special Vero Beach is, knows how special Indian River County is. And I think our discussion tonight, though it is on a matter of numbers, it's on a matter of property taxes, is reflected, as Mayor Catugno said, of a deeper issue, which is that we want to be able to define the type of community that we want to have here in Vero Beach and Indian River County, or do we want to surrender that ability to the wider statewide political forces? And I'm just going to be blunt about that. To really put some of this issue in context, Maribel mentioned the $468 million number. What that is that is the sum total of all property taxes collected in this county. If you add up your county, your school district, your municipalities, that's the city of Vero Beach, city of Sebastian, city of Fellsmere, city of Indian River Shores, and the town of Orchid, as well as your independent districts, your hospital district, your mosquito control district, the St. John's Water District. All combined property taxes in Indian River County collected is $468 million. Now, why is that important? Maribel also mentioned another number, the total property value of Indian River County. $50.5 billion. I spoke to property appraiser Davis last Friday. He was kind of getting me that number and the total assessed number. $50.5 billion. So let's do the math. Let's take that $468 million divided by 50.5. You're looking at 0.9%. So what that means is the combined total property taxes levied in this county do not even equal 1% of the total tax base of property values. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I share this because let's look at the state of Florida. Assesses a 6% sales tax. So look at the federal government, a 15.3% payroll tax, up to a 37% income tax. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important to put this issue in context. The narrative is that property taxes in this county and the state are super excessive. But here in Indian River County, The partnership that's existed between the Taxpayer Association, our county commission, our cities, there's issues that we disagree on every now and then, but we're all working together and have decades and decades of collaboration to make sure that the tax dollars that you spend your governments are going to the best source and that we are only using what is required and we are not being excessive. And ladies and gentlemen, if you ask yourself about this issue, we are trying to get rid of a portion of a 1% tax. That is essentially what this is about. Mayor Katubno, Commissioner Lohr have spoken about the impacts that this would likely befall on us. I think we should just ask the basic question of, do we want to sacrifice a 1% tax to impose higher fees, to impose, dare I say, potentially higher sales taxes, impact fees, fees for parking, fees for every single walk of life that we all enjoy in this community? And the answer I have is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't see the justification of that. I think if there is a low tax that is endured for hundreds of years, I think there's likely a reason for that. And again, I applaud what the legislature is trying to do. They're trying to look at opportunities to save taxpayer funds. That's the mission of the Taxpayer Association. But ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the Indian River County budget as an example. Over 20 years, the increased spending of the county commission is not even half the rate of national inflation. This is a, yes, absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, this doesn't mean there's certain issues where we don't disagree on. This doesn't mean there's many things that we in the association don't think need to be done. But it does mean that on this issue, the autonomy of local governments in Florida in this county has produced a tax base and a tax rate that is far below what the state of Florida imposes and far below what the federal government imposes. And that is something we should all be very proud of. At the end, I would just end by saying, look, thank you all for coming here tonight. Again, we have a lot of lengthy discussion, but one of my good friends asked me, "Hey, Lance, are you able to hang out Wednesday?" And I said, "No, I'm going to be with the cool kids talking about property taxes." So a bit of humor for this evening. And I would just briefly end by saying, John mentioned the height restriction that's staple in this community. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the Taxpayers Association, while we're most known for our budget recommendations and most known for advocating for fiscal responsibility, certainly we took a look at all the issues: zoning, education, parks, recreation. We want to make sure this community has the best county, the best cities, the best schools, and really ultimately that our quality of life, whether it's ourselves, whether it's our grandparents, whether it's our grandkids, really can achieve the American dream here in Indian River County. That's what we're trying to do in the association, and I look forward to the discussion this evening. Thank you all so much.
All right, now you're thinking, if you have a 26-year-old child, you're going, okay. Now, you in a very eloquent way, you said we're very judicious in terms of how we allocate taxes and what we charge. So fun fact, we have 67 counties in Florida, and Indian River County is ranked number 60. In other words, the 60th lowest county in terms of taxation.
St. Lucie to the south is one of the worst.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm totally serious.
So you're gonna stay here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm happy to walk around, and I suspect many of you have questions to our panel. You raised your hand first, so do you still have a question, or did they answer your question?
Well, here, why don't you take mine? Oh, there you go.
I was just wondering, it seems like to make sense of this, if the state doesn't need state taxes, why don't they just eliminate the state property taxes and let the counties decide locally what they need to collect on their communities? I mean, to me, that's how it should be fixed.
So who wants to make a comment on that?
I think I can try to take a stab at it. So you realize that each county has a millage rate, and they generate the county property tax. I wasn't sure of your question, but I do want to add this. For a political person or a candidate that may be looking to go to a higher office, to say that you are no longer going to pay property taxes is disingenuous. You are going to pay school board taxes for sure. You are going to get a trim notice, and you're still going to be paying property taxes, friends. So don't let somebody fool you that you're not paying property tax. And I keep hearing it over and over and over, the free state of Florida, we're no longer paying property. You're gonna pay property taxes because the schools are carved out. The second thing is has a fire district in Indian River County, and the sheriff's office does not have a taxing district. However, the number one responsibility, in my opinion, of government, particularly local government, is make sure we're all safe. Fire, EMS, and law enforcement, to include obviously the cities. Those dollars are large. Those dollars have to be accrued somehow. To say we're going to raise taxes to go to the beach or raise parking listen, that is not a drop in the bucket for those two entities, fire and law enforcement. So let's be very mindful of that. Let's be very mindful of what you're hearing about eliminating property taxes. Sounds great. Everybody would vote for that. However, when you go to buy that 2026 Toyota Camry, and you see it advertised for $29,999, and you get there and they say, doggone, we just sold that one, but we've got this one for you, right? How many times does that happen? So please be careful. Again, there's not a Senate bill. Let's relax.
I will just add briefly to that. One of the items of discussion that is also often spoken on House Resolution 203 is that it preserves funding for law enforcement, for fire public safety. That's something that you often hear. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to make this clear. It caps it at 2025, 2026 rates. What that means is the following. The last 2 years I've been president of the Taxpayer Association. Every year we have recommended an increase in both the sheriff and the fire rescue. In fact, we've actually gone a step further with fire rescue. We've recommended that the county move to a 42-hour work week for fire rescue. That's going to require a lot more firefighters to be hired. So, ladies and gentlemen, it sounds nice to say we're going to preserve funding at 2025 levels. The challenge is you not only want to factor in cost of living increases for first responders going forward each year, you also want to think about the fact that this is a growing county. It's going to require more deputies. It's going to require more police officers. It's going to require more firefighters. And most significantly, friends, if you think about this kind of long term, does it make sense if you want to preserve or expand that to then take away 46.5% of the funding source? In this county, that's the estimated amount of homesteaded revenue or revenue to property taxes that comes from homesteaded properties, 46.7%. So it makes it very difficult for all of us to have the conversation about how do we on one hand preserve this or even expand it going forward when we need to add more firefighters, when we need to add more police officers, because the actual revenue funding this is going down and dwindling. So I think that's an important point for everyone to keep in mind. Again, if we are always looking for opportunities to cut taxes, eliminate taxes, but again, less than 1% of the tax base is what property taxes take care of. And if you add everything up across the county, I think we've done a pretty good job. There's always ways to improve. The association would, obviously every single year what we do is try to look for opportunities to increase efficiency, not only on the money side, but on the operation side. But I really think it's important to be mindful of what actually is being proposed in the state and not just go off of what we hear at, frankly, shiny press conferences.
Then we want to does anybody have a question while I'm back here? Okay, and I'll come back up front here.
Okay, so you said that the market value for our county is 50 billion, but the taxes are based on the assessment value, right?
Yep.
So what's the assessment value?
31.3 billion. So if we adjust that number, if you take 468 million total property taxes collected and divided by that number, you're looking at about 1.48%. So it goes from being almost 1% to being almost not even 1.5% is the total tax if you want to use assessed value. The microphone's getting a bit funny, so hopefully my answer is clear enough. But either way, you're still looking at, again, one of the lowest tax rates assessed if you base it off of the total taxes collected divided by the total tax base.
Okay, this gentleman here.
I guess it's not fair yet,
Probably better leave this.
Okay.
I think I have a two-part question. Sure. You gentlemen have contact with your peers in all the other counties. Indian River County, we cannot individually sway what the legislature does. What do your peers in the other counties and cities feel about this? After your answer, then I'll ask another question if I could.
I'll address the municipality part of it. City of Vero Beach, like most municipalities, are a member of they call the Florida League of Cities. And during both Zoom meetings and personal conferences that I've attended, they are rallying the municipalities throughout the state. They have on their websites, which are accessible to anybody who wants to look it up. They have packets on what this, on the impact of what these property tax reductions would be, the reasoning behind, what fair property taxes are all about, and how this could affect municipalities. And in fact, they have done a breakdown specifically about Vero Beach, and you can access that. Now, it's not right up to date. I think it's one fiscal year behind, but it'll show you what we're collecting and how we're spending our money.
But do the other counties have the same consensus that you do?
Yes. Now,
That said, you have a closer relationship with Tallahassee. Are they listening to you when you say, we don't want this, our constituents don't want this?
This is a comedy show? I don't know. Hey, Tallahassee, let's go. We had this discussion last night.
Yes.
I hope I didn't bring up.
I will tell you
You're
that.
a perfect straight man on this one.
I've been there throughout my whole life, so.
This is a comedy.
Yeah, I will tell you, sir, I appreciate that. Of the 67 counties, we all are part of the Florida Association of Counties. Collectively, we stand together. Collectively, we lobby together. Unanimously, we are not in favor of this. What it has done is shed light on a few things. But clearly, I think, Mr. Mayor, there's over 200 cities, municipalities that this would impact drastically. There's also over 30 financially strained counties of the 67, primarily North Central Florida, that clearly would have a problem. It's not lost on me either, and you shouldn't be either as taxpayers of this county, that through the county government, we also fund here's the irony, certain state agencies, the state attorney's office, the prosecutor, the public defender's office, the medical examiner's office, partially the health department. Remember, those are state agencies that we are obliged to help fund a state agency. Yet here we have this perspective from Tallahassee saying, well, it's kind of like, borrowing money from your grandfather and loaning it, halfway to your grandchild or what have you. So it's confusing, but I can tell you unanimously the 67 counties are not. And here's what I predict if this thing goes forward. We talked about fire and EMS. We talked about police departments and sheriff's offices. One thing that we have to talk about is politics. We have to talk about if any bill gets traction, there are, of course, lobbyists, but there's also things called collective bargaining unions. They have not gotten involved because there's nothing to get involved with yet. But I can tell you, you've seen certain amendments get on ballots in the past. In fact, 24, there's 2 significant ballots. Initiatives, and those were struck down. I would predict you're going to see, if it gets that far, you will see something like that. I do not think, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I hope to say one day I told you guys that this thing didn't have traction.
So let me take this, you raised your hand, and I'll come back to you ladies.
Let me add one thing just before you.
Of course.
I've known Lance a number of years, and you see he's got a great command of the numbers. So I think you should all take a lot of comfort, and that the Taxpayers Association is telling you that your local governments are treating you very, very fairly.
That's right.
And then we do the
Okay, okay.
I'll buy you like that. And this gentleman said, this Tallahassee listening to you. And you heard Daryl's answer. But one of the things I wanted to bring up is that we're listening to you. We are here tonight to talk to you, our constituents. If this thing passes, we have ceded all of that to Tallahassee. And let me tell you, I don't think any of you can remember when they've come down here and done something like this for you.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for us to get anything back other than something that says your email was received.
That's true.
Very interesting.
And we have invited your congressman. He has so far graciously declined the invitation, just as FYI. Great. Real quick, I promised the theater I'd make a public service announcement. The bar is open. You need to warm up. That reminded me when I saw you bring in those 2 drinks. Because those are kind of the revenues for tonight for the theater. So you're more than welcome to get up, get a drink, but please come on back. So this nice lady here, raise her hand. I'll promise to come back to all of you.
Here you go.
This question is mainly for Lance.
Hi.
Because you really know about this and you've listened to people talk about this.
Supposedly.
I taught at the Indian River Charter High School, a public grassroots school. I also taught for about 3 months with a private company online, a charter school that allows any public kid to go to it. And no matter whether this bill is passed or not, we have our school board taxes. Last year, at the beginning of the school year, there were 22,000 people in the state of Florida that applied for the vouchers, education vouchers, took the money, and then put their kids back into public schools. And so those public schools dollars weren't there. And that's what you have information that you can show.
Mhm.
We're currently at 30,000 plus that have done that. So the money is not necessarily being used correctly. Also, we now have in this county elementary schools and middle schools being combined because there have been so many people taking their kids out and using those voucher dollars to send them elsewhere. And if those schools do not meet 70% occupancy, those private multi-million-dollar companies can come in and occupy the school, the publicly purchased and built schools that have been there for decades. And they don't have to, my understanding is they don't have to pay rent and they don't have to maintain those buildings either. And that would fall on the county. Can you inform everybody more of what you know about that?
Sure, absolutely. And we'll tie this back to property taxes, but the association has made clear in the 2025-2026 school district budget statement that there is no way to look at the finances of the school district and not notice the impact of the voucher program. Again, whether you're pro school choice, whether you're pro voucher, anti voucher, there has been a consistent flow of money outside of the public school system, and that's really the core of what you're talking about. What we've called for is that, again, if public tax dollars are going someplace, we need to know what those tax dollars are doing. I do not want to impose burdensome restrictions on parents, but I do want to make sure that we know where that money is going. And unfortunately, the state has not put in much accountability with regards to that system. I do want to, however, give praise to our state senator because she did address the association in September and made a really good point. We talk often about parental rights. We don't talk often enough about parental responsibilities. And I think we need to make sure that on the voucher system, we're putting in place systems where we know that if there's a school that's taking voucher money, we know that they're teaching math. We know that they're teaching reading because, again, it's a private school, but it's our tax dollars, our public tax dollars going to support that. And again, I want to be clear. I actually, believe it or not, when I think I was 10 or 11, for going to middle school, I actually got rezoned for a school I did not want to go to. So again, this was before school choice was super popular. So I sympathize with anyone who wants school choice. I'm pro school choice, but I think if we're going to have public tax dollars fund anything, whether it's our schools, whether it's private schools, whether it's public schools, whether it's county, whether it's the city, we have to have standards to assess what we are getting from those tax dollars. And I think that's really the core of what you're talking about.
Let's see, I'm gonna make a loop. We hear from all of you that, you have strong feelings in your institutions that you belong to, have strong feelings against this movement, and it is a movement. So who is instigating this, and what is their motivation? As was said just now, there was a movement and it's become very successful in almost eliminating public schools around the country. So who's pushing this? Where's this all coming from?
Everything with schools. Schools are taxes. Schools are property taxes.
Property tax.
Okay, we can speak to that. I can.
Go ahead, say it.
I guess we'll make our comments on this. My comments on this is, this is purely a political play. This is based solely on the fact of a lame duck governor trying to make, I guess, a wonderful swan song out the door as he tries to prep himself for whatever his future life is after being the governor. It's also, and this is my opinion, it's also, I don't know if anybody remembers the kind of animated movie called Up. And in Up, okay, there was a dog named Doug. And every time Doug saw a squirrel, he would go, squirrel. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to deflect your attention from the fact that the real issue in Florida is not your property taxes, but your insurance.
That's right.
And that is why they want to deflect your attention. Because the insurance lobby in Tallahassee, and the gentleman, I think, made a question prior of why do we contact our reps? Of course we contact our reps. But Florida, not unlike other states.
I want to say, I don't doubt you contact them. My question was, do they listen to you?
Well, I'm going to get into that.
Okay.
Okay, Florida, because of the short session and the fact that it's a very large state, most every bill that gets written is written by lobbyists in one way, shape, or form. Because it's impossible to introduce all these bills and have them written by the people that we elected go there. So lobbyists drive what gets done in Tallahassee. The money paid to the insurance lobby is large. And that's the issue. The issue is address insurance. I'm sure there are places in this state that could be run more efficiently. I think we're all lucky that we live in this county, and I think I'm lucky that I live in Vero Beach because we are, and not saying that the city council, because it happened long before I showed up, we are fiscally responsible. Do we make mistakes? Yes, occasionally we make mistakes. But you know what? We go ahead and we correct them, and there's a number of people out there I know who have contacted me directly, and they get answers. And that's what local government is all about. But what they're trying to do in Tallahassee is to deflect your attention to the true issue which is going on. Now, that's my feeling, and that's how I read the tea leaves and how things get done in Tallahassee and what is happening at this point in time.
Thank you, John.
Well, thank you, John. There's two of us up here that can be removed from office by the governor. That's me and you. So I don't know what you're doing tomorrow, but I'll be apparently looking for John. But no, that's our opinion. But that's truly our opinion. I mean, there could be some merit to it. This didn't come up last year. It didn't come up the year before last year. Ironically, it has come up this year. Lance.
Oh, no.
Okay, any questions? I'll take any questions.
So let me take Mr. Price here.
Yeah.
Certainly, all of us, just don't want to pay property taxes where there's not, we understand there are issues involved. And you made it very clear. Every government, though, has waste in what happens. And I think I heard somebody say the total loss would be $7.5 million out of the budget.
For the city.
For the city.
For just the city of Vero Beach.
I'm sorry, for the city?
Yes.
Okay, so how much would it be for the county?
Well, we've done several exercises and somewhere, depending on how it falls, one proposal would be to raise currently you have a homestead exemption of 50,000. To raise it to 75,000, we would have to chase over 3.5 million. To raise it to 100,000, we would be over 7 million. To eliminate it, we're talking between 20 and 30 million dollars. So, but let me say this. I was a leader during the recession at the sheriff's office. Then we had to deal with COVID and the like. I will tell you that the county is prepared to pare back if we have to. There's no doubt about it. We are, I want to say, that organized and that planned. But as I think Monty said, there's certain services that you would have to see some type of reduction. Generally speaking, 80 to 83% of any budget, and I just said our budget, county budget is about $598 million, is personnel costs. Unlike the private sector, the public sector's personnel costs, with obviously some of the things that the benefits and the salaries, is generally between 80, 83%. So that tells you, if you juxtapose that versus cuts, it's going to be people. It's not going to be raising parking, raising beach, doing all this stuff. It's people. And with people reduction, you're going to have a service reduction. Unless it's not lost on us either that we have 143 million tourists come to our state. 143 million tourists. And guess what? They love Disney World. They love the Palm Beaches and South Beach. They love Cape Canaveral just to our north. What do? They come through here more than likely. So there's an opportunity. I think the governor's mentioned plenty of times, let the tourists pay for everything. Perhaps that's an option. We haven't seen the Senate or the governor's proposal. So maybe there's something that we don't know that is coming down the line. But it would certainly be a reduction. Yes, ma'am.
Well, but I would still say this would put the onus, I mean, I don't know which way it's going to go either, nobody knows. But it would put the onus on city government and county government to really focus on what we shouldn't be spending.
Well, it would put the onus on focusing on, if you want to call it essentials. But sir, I want to say this. If you look at our county, a lot of us call it paradise. It did not happen by accident. It happened incrementally. When we start talking about our 22 miles of beach and our 22 miles of lagoon and how we together collectively have protected it, when we talk about the amenities that we have in this county, from South County to North County, there is a reason why we are the gem of the treasure coast. It didn't happen by accident. Now, would that perhaps aggregate? Of course it could. We don't want that. As mentioned for the third time, this is a light shining on every municipality and every county. And you have seen in the past where our state CFO and others, Elon Musk, have looked at certain programs. And guess what? If there was, Lance eloquently said, and we can prove that we are not one of those that are misusing taxpaying dollars. If that was, then we would certainly be exposed. So we're very confident in that not occurring.
You want to take this gentleman and then I'll.
Sure.
I promise.
Hi, guys. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it. You talked about losing home rule. How does this take away our ability to rule elected officials, to have governance over our county, our town? How's it going to affect the height of our buildings here? This isn't something that Tallahassee does. So how would this
There's legislation.
affect us?
You talk about recent legislation about the zoning.
There's, you have to take it in Monty will chime in and give you much more information on this, but right now, this is just one of the issues that are in Tallahassee. You have a bill that passed last year called SB 180,
Yep.
which affects every municipality, which means every county, and how you can recover from a named storm. Sounds very innocuous. How can that be bad? But when you get into details of that law, you find out that you cannot modify your comprehensive plan. You cannot make any zoning changes or code enforcement changes that would be adverse by the thought process of the developer, would adverse impact his ability to rebuild. That has caused the city of Orlando's comprehensive plan, which they worked on for 10 years, to be rejected by the state. So that's one thing. They're working on a bill, in fact, it passed last year, which affects how, when people want to address how they bring down trees, and how the trees are considered, whether heritage tree or not. That was passed last year. They also passed 2 years ago, and this is a number of issues that happened, and has happened in my neighborhood in Central Beach, where people operating home businesses out of their home, how we as a city can regulate that. And they're very specific. And actually, it's not regulated in many instances. And we've had this issue, and I think there's one or two of my neighbors there, they'll tell you this is true. Some businesses trying to operate out of neighborhoods. So they've also, there's also a ability to put neighborhood protection, zoning, and code enforcement, how they've attacked that from a home rule standpoint by laws they've passed, which has our own planning department wondering about some of the changes that we were going to make for neighborhood protection, whether or not they would be accepted or not by the state. So this property, that's local rule. Then when you add this, excuse me?
What does that have to do with this, with home?
Because it takes money to fund all these efforts that a city does to make sure all code enforcement is done properly, planning and zoning is done properly, maintenance infrastructure is done properly, and all that is monitored and effectively enforced. Now, when you add the aspect of this issue, we deal with property tax, which is your funding mechanism, then it does affect your home rule, because you're going to get to a point. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow, and this is not to be alarmist, but this is, you have to look at the progression, because a bright shiny bauble is staring at the face right now, which is I'm going to eliminate my property taxes. But this is what happens. This is the gradual erosion of what happens. So the city of Vero Beach, and every enterprise fund that we have, has less than 400 people totally employed in every enterprise fund, garbage collection, water, sewer, police, everything. So you get to a point where your services will erode if we can no longer rely on a revenue stream. Your services have to erode, because the 80, like Daryl mentioned, 80 to 83% in here is people. And once you get to a point where you've eroded your people, then to be quite frank, as a whole business person, what's my value added to you anymore? why am I here? Why am I even here if you can't get your road fixed, if you can't get the pavilion repaired, if you can't call up and somebody can come, if your police department, which has about a 3-minute response time, is now 6 or 7 or 8-minute response time, if all these are happening, and this not happen tomorrow, this won't happen the next day. Trust me. Oh, but that's the question. If you want to plan long term for quality of life for your children and your grandchildren, that's what you think about.
If this affects the 40% that are homestead, you could still raise taxes on businesses, on the homes that are not homesteaded.
But if I raise a tax in a business and a property owner who rents property, guess what happens? The person renting that property is going to get the increase. Because I don't know if anybody's here, and I see there's a couple of people I know have properties, they're just going to absorb the tax increase.
No, there we go. Tell us a little bit more.
If I may, I do just want to briefly say, to that gentleman right there, you asked very directly, why is this a attack on home rule? The reason is because it's not that Darrell Moore or Lance Lunsford or John Catuvno are proposing some proposal to eliminate homesteaded property taxes here in North County. It is that the state legislature is forcing all of us to make that decision. So we're not sitting here in the driver's seat saying we are able to find some proposal to eliminate homesteaded taxes on non-school. It is that the state is imposing that decision on us. And a bit of context, in 1968, the principle of home rule was that, as we all know from civics class, the federal government has 2 separations of powers, the legislative, the executive, and judicial, and then another separation of powers between the federal government and the state government. Home rule was, in effect, a desire to make the state of Florida, between the state and the local counties, have that same distributed sense of federalism, where local governments are taking over the responsibility of anything the state was not already doing. What we're seeing now on proposals like property taxes, on proposals like zoning, is our ability to shape our community is getting more and more concentrated up in the state. And the reason that's the problem is because, Serge, your point about finding waste and finding excessive spending at a local level, every year the Taxpayer Association goes through our budgets. I can call this gentleman right here, or that gentleman, or this gentleman, and say, Commissioner, Mayor, we're finding that this amount of money is not going to the right use, or hey, we should invest and reallocate funding in this new area because it makes more sense. We can have those conversations, have those debates, have those negotiations. The public, we can all have that discussion here as well. We get to shape the community that we live in. The principle that's being eroded is the state now wants to make those decisions for us. And I don't care whether you're Republican, I don't care whether you're Democrat. I don't think that is right. I think this country is founded on the idea that there is a separation of powers between your local, your state, and your federal government, and that institution is more important than achieving 1 or 2 political wins here and there, just because I think I know better than someone else in another part of the state. That's all it is.
As we get to the end of this evening, I think we should all be very proud of all the work you guys do. Thank you very much. My question now has to do with, okay, we have all this information. How do we get this information to the 3 women I heard who are employees of Target, not a commercial, talking about this tax, property tax, and not having the information you just presented? What is our plan, not our hope?
Information campaign, education campaign.
So in other words, you're asking if there's like a public education?
How are we gonna?
Because,
I'll take a stab at that.
Okay.
Tomorrow morning, at 9 o'clock, we have our second meeting of all the city managers, county administrators, and each brings an elected official. And we're talking about a campaign to get this information out in front of the public. The city of Sebastian is already producing some videos. The city council authorized me at our last meeting to bring in some consultants for social media to push this information out so that we can educate the people, because not everybody can come tonight. You folks are really interested, well-informed, but here to get more information. And we're going to try to get that information out to see what the ramifications of this would be.
Knowledge is power.
Sure.
But it's kind of counterintuitive. You're being told you could save a lot of money in taxes. And then you're being told that, but then you have to recognize that the money has to still come from
Yeah.
somewhere.
And I'll add that if it makes it to a ballot measure, then our hands are tied a little more than they are now because we can't spend public funds advocating for or campaigning against these issues. We can do education, but you can be challenged on that pretty quickly if one side thinks that your education is leaning one way or the other. So we're trying to get out ahead of it.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a couple of you indicated earlier that out of all of our property tax that we pay, a certain percentage of it goes to fund state functions, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so my question then is, what's the plan on the part of the whiz kids in Tallahassee to make up for the loss of that income? I mean, are they gonna just, I mean, for example, I don't know whether it happens at the city level or the county level, but let me just put it on the county. Every year, Indian River County sends Tallahassee X number of dollars, okay?
Correct.
So now we're gonna go ahead and pass this bill, and the state is gonna say, you know what, Indian River County, you don't need to send us that anymore. Well, that ain't gonna happen, right? So
They're not.
what's their plan?
Well, that's a good question. The fact is, out of property tax, ad valorem dollars, the county, and this is something that is separate, distinct from the municipality, the county, not the city, is responsible for paying, offsetting certain state agencies. I mentioned it, the public defender, the prosecutor, the medical examiner, the health department. So here, the irony is that, by the way, and those dollars are ad valorem dollars, property tax dollars. They're saying the only thing that we're going to allow are school dollars. The irony is because the state kicks in money for the school districts throughout the state. And nice lady exposed and talked some things about the variety of educational systems that we have. This is where the heartburn is you, county, figured out, but by the way, you are mandated by statute to pay a percentage of these state agencies. By the way, all of these county buildings that we house state employees in, those are our buildings, those are the county buildings, right? The health department, all of those things that you can think of. So that, I think, is a bit why we are going to have that ongoing rub, because we're not going to, of course, we're going to have to pay them. That's going to come first. If we have a hierarchy of what we have to pay, it's our state mandated obligations. And the other thing that I think the gentleman mentioned, when you start thinking about the non-homesteaded properties, first of all, I think there's a great argument in saying that, to debate the argument that somebody says, well, our property taxes are a runaway. It's outrageous. Well, friends, we have something called Save Our Homes. That came about many years ago. 3% cap or CPI, whichever's lower, by the way, in the state of Florida for your homesteaded properties. For somebody to tell you that their homesteaded property taxes are out of control, it's not true. We are conservative as a county with respect to our millage rates, which is part of that formula. Additionally, if you have a commercial property, you're capped at 10% as far as the mean old county municipality raising your rates. But at the end of the day, and I think John said it, commercial and let's say our rentals, or let's say our snowbird friends that do not have their homes homesteaded here, more than likely that burden would shift to them. And what happens if you're in a mobile home park or a manufactured park and you are paying lot rent, plenty of those in our community, and that commercial property that your manufactured home sits upon is now having to, we, the bad guys, are going to have to find the dollar somewhere, raise their property taxes. Well, like I think Lance said, or John said, they're going to pass it on to that person, the consumer one. So a lot of people say, well, it's a tax rate. No, it's a tax shift is what it is. We again, and I'll reiterate, let's remain calm. We're going to get through this. There's not a hostage. Nobody's bleeding. We're going to get through it.
Two very important points.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have 10 minutes left because we promised the theater that we would close at 7. And so I saw 1, 2, 4 more questions. So let's divide the 10 minutes up to like 2-minute increments. And okay, if I go to the question or
Absolutely. I'll be very brief.
Okay.
So another important factor, ladies and gentlemen, is there's the way I like to think about our budget cycles, the way the TPA likes to think about our budget cycles is there's really two. One is the normal budget cycle. The other is known as the capital improvement program cycle. So you have, in a sense, your expenses each year, your revenue each year, but you also have the buildings that Daryl just mentioned, the new facilities going up, the new projects going up. In order to keep the cost of financing that super low, a very common practice among municipal governments, like businesses, is issuing bonds. Bond rates like stability. And so what we're proposing, if you eliminate property tax, is taking a very stable revenue source and shifting it, as Daryl and John were saying, potentially to fees. Well, ladies and gentlemen, fees are not as stable because fees only go in place if you're using a service. So another part that really hasn't been talked about is the financing for all of the capital projects are going to be much more at risk because the interest rates may be higher, because the revenue sources aren't as stable, and that means all of us are going to be paying more on that front. The second thing, I'll be very brief on this, is the reason why the Taxpayer Association has also not come out publicly on this issue because we're also watching to see what happens in the state. Daryl has done a really good job articulating how at this point, because the Florida Senate and the presiding officers of the Florida Senate have really been trying to temper this. Senate President Albert, and I want to give him a shout out, he actually has issued an interview on CBS saying that he wants to make sure that what they're considering is something that's vetted. We have to kind of take the temperature back a little bit, really look at this and see all the potential effects of this. So again, there's no indication currently at this evening the Senate is going to take up that issue. Obviously, that could change. But more significantly, I'll just say the association, this is by far the number one issue that we are monitoring this year. I would be remiss if I didn't say we had our board meeting actually today, and my colleagues and I are concerned about what the plan is, because it isn't obvious to us what's going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about something. One of the primary roles of the association, especially from the perspective of our elected leaders, is that we are looking at all of the big picture. We are connecting the dots. We are providing plans for long-term and short-term issues. The fact that we do not know, the fact that the Taxpayer Association president is sitting here telling you we don't really know, that should frighten you, and that should really get home the point that we are all operating in the dark. And that is, frankly, with all due respect to our colleagues in Tallahassee, we all want to keep taxes low, but that is not how you do effective public policy.
Hello. My name is John. How do you do? I've been listening to you talk about the adverse effects of this particular proposal. What I was wondering is, what was the thinking, maybe because I'm lacking more information, what was the thinking behind the actual proposal and why they did this? Obviously, it's put more money in people's pockets, but there must be some other reason, bigger reason that I'm maybe missing.
He wants to, what's the reason?
What's the reason for this conversation?
Why did, wow, sure.
Yeah, sure. What's the reason for tonight?
no,
Insurance, you've already.
I think he,
I'll be brief. I'll steal man. He wants to know what is the reasoning and thinking behind this. I'll also be brief because I've talked a lot. The governor, when he was in the House of Representatives, was part of a coalition that really wanted, way back in the day, to change the national income tax to a national sales, the federal house, the U.S. House, from an income tax to a sales tax. So for a long time, Governor DeSantis has had this mindset that our economy functioning via a sales tax would be more efficient than the current ways that we tax it at the federal level and state level. Now, Governor DeSantis is really the force behind this proposal to eliminate property taxes. The thinking is, this is a tax that is assessed that Floridians have to pay. Let's gut it and let's see what happens. Maybe find other revenue sources. That is really the thinking behind this. It's the same way that you and I would say, hey, let's look at opportunities to lower taxes. The challenge from all of us is we just want to know what the game plan is if we're going to proceed in that direction. And we want to make sure that if we are going to proceed in that direction, We know what the heck we're going to do. But the thinking really, the steel man is it's a tax that is assessed. Let's see if we can find a way to lower it. We also, all of us know when we get our short notices, the bill keeps getting more expensive. But again, we can all hold our governments accountable because on your trim notice, it will show the millage rate. That is the number that we look at in the TP. That is the number that you should look at when it comes to seeing if your government raised or lowered taxes. The primary reason and the primary angst is because each year as property values go up because our economy, our city, our county is more prosperous, there's natural frustration that we all have and we have to pay more in tax bills. So the thinking at the state is that, well, what if we just took away that as the funding mechanism and replaced it with fees, with impact fees, with charges for services, with maybe people have voted out sales tax. Unfortunately, folks, some people are afraid of if this is going to lead to a potential income tax. I don't want to fearmonger, but that's been put out there. So the steel man is just, we have a tax, let's find a way to get rid of it, and let's find a viable replacement. The challenge is, I think speaking for all of us, we just don't see a way to do that without a lot of hurt, a lot of inefficiency.
Thank you. Good job.
All right, so I have time for one or two more questions. So let me, ladies first.
Thank you very much. I would like to go back to the concept of the homestead exemption. We're kind of bypassing that all. Homestead exemption is for the purpose of people to be able to stay in their home, have in their home, and the government not be able to have so much of a handle on it. What has happened is Florida came in and that we have the homestead exemption, which is done by the state. The state makes that decision. So in any decisions on homestead exemption, that's not taking away any hometown rule, not on exemptions. So the market has put you out of your homestead exemption and the value you were getting out of that homestead exemption. So it came in with Save Our Homes. Save Our Homes added the additional 25,000 above 75,000. It becomes a complicated mathematical structure. So here we are. We now have a homestead exemption of 50,000, but this was initiated when homes with the average price of a home was $150,000, not $400,000. So essentially, the legislator is looking for a way for people to regain what they have actually lost through market value on their homestead exemption. So we're talking about budget here. I just want to make that statement, but we're not getting the value that we wanted for homestead exemption as it was initiated for the state. That's one. Secondly, now we're talking about budget. I'm going to make this really simple. In my house, when there's a loss of revenue, I have to go looking somewhere else. I think that even Commissioner Moore said, we don't know what that other option is. So to presume that it has to be this, that, or the other, it would be presumptuous of us. It would be prudent of us to be working with the state to work that through, should this go through. Will this go through? Thirdly, possibly not, because Health Bill 203 has a carve out for the school, which is not well liked at the legislature. Still has to go to the Senate, and we still have to come to terms with it. But I think that we need to get back to what is the purpose of homestead exemption? To allow people to stay in their home without excessive taxes. Thank you.
No worries. John, I sense you'd like to answer this question or comment.
That's a nice statement.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a great statement, and it's a philosophical statement. It's an academic statement, but that's not the reality of life. Okay? The reality of life is that you look at your tax situation in where you live and in the state in general, and you compare that for the services that you get. And it's not like running your home budget. Please do not use that as an example. Bad example. Bad. No. You made a comment. I'm going to comment on your comment. So, for instance, our city, roughly $36 million. That's the general fund. $14 million is ad valorem tax revenue. 14.36, last time I heard, is 22. I don't think your home budget could take that percentage of a whack and you decide that the only thing I gotta do is don't go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or make some minor adjustments. It doesn't happen at that level of a cut. Now, I agree with Daryl. You know, we're not bleeding here. We're not on fire. Well, we're here to try to educate. But Daryl comes from public safety, law enforcement. We have police and fire for the instance of when those things occur, that you can call on them and they show up. Right now, I believe we're calling on ourselves as public servants to make you aware of this situation. You could agree with it, you can disagree with it. But now you're gonna be aware, and we're gonna try to educate you on the what if. And I think that's the best thing that we can do. Address the information, address the misinformation, and give you the transparency of the information so you can make an informed decision.
Thank you.
So how are you doing here in the meat locker tonight, huh? Next time you come, bring your ski jacket. It is always cold in this building. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for your time. You've done a great job educating me. So now, I think this is too much, we can't make it work, the way it is right now, right? And so hopefully you'll find a reasonable solution. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.